We want to kick off with the CEO of DaVinci, Professor Ben Anderson, having a conversation with us on evolution of business processes.
Okay, I want to start with a story which maybe I've shared with some of you. Is about 30 years ago, rabbits seemed to multiply at such a rate in Europe that people like us, called human beings, thought that we had to do something because of the rabbit problem. Not probably taking into account that we were part of the problem because we took away the animals that kept the rabbit population, the numbers down. But let that be as it may. So they introduced a virus into the rabbit population in France and southern parts of Belgium. So what do you think was the aim of that?
The virus.
Sorry?
The virus.
What was the aim of the human beings putting the virus?
To kill the rabbits. Yeah.
To kill the rabbits. To kill the rabbits. Easily. And
Humanely.
sorry?
Humanely.
Mainly. And did they solve the problem?
That's not a problem.
Depends on
Probably yes. So they created a solution, they thought. So you may ask, how does this relate? It's now 30 years later. So the rabbit population in Belgium and France is growing again amidst the virus. What do we call that? Okay, if we take a more sophisticated comment,
Evolution.
a wicked problem. Is it a problem? What has happened there?
Not if you like eating rabbits.
maybe eat more. Yeah?
But what has happened there?
Well, the problem is you look at the cause. What caused the rabbit population to increase? If you took away the immediate threat of what feeds on rabbits, whether in this case it's foxes or wolves or whatever, is that not your problem, not the rabbits increasing?
What was maybe adapt?
To survive, they had
So we, even if we went to the root cause here, the question is, did we as human beings, so-called human beings, did we account for the notion of evolution? No, because a rabbit is a rabbit. And a human being is a human being, and we all just do we are, and we just replicate it and we stay the same, we argue. Well, this research with the rabbits confirms to me that in 30 years' time, both the virus, which is a living thing, and the rabbit, which is a living thing, have changed. So where the virus had control over the rabbit's biosystem, 30 years later, the rabbit has control over the virus biosystem. And I want to ask, what do you call that in your mind?
Equilibrium.
Equilibrium.
Created probably some form of balance.
Some balance. And are we opposed to the idea of considering that that's evolution?
Yeah. No?
So I don't want to introduce the idea of evolution as a because I'm very aware of the religious tenets of the construct of evolution. And I can see how the brains dim a bit, and say, don't go there please, don't go there. Well, we can call it whatever we wish. The reality is, in a 30-year period, something has happened in the living biosystem of the virus and in the living biosystem of the rabbit. And where the disequilibrium was meant to create the one way around, 30 years later, that same system, call it adjusted, adapted, adopted, aligned, being agile, being engaged, whatever you want to call it, But ultimately, there's been an evolvement of a new genetic system, biogenetic system for the rabbit. And the biokinetic system of the virus is not relevant for the rabbit. I often wonder if we look at businesses and at just working. Recently I had the opportunity to be in Stockholm and in Harare, and I was amazed by the different evolutions of workplace systems. And I was wondering, I wasn't worried whether the one is right and the other one is wrong, but I was curious whether the one involves more energy and the other involves less energy. And I will be curious to know, where do you think was the more energy observed? Okay, so you are different. So you're off the hook. So can somebody say who agrees? Why would he say Europe? Anybody? Catherine?
I'll say Africa.
Okay, no, I don't want that. I want to hear now.
I'll say initially Europe and now Africa. So
Okay.
Europe invested more energy in the beginning to get the systems, and now the systems are probably make things more efficient, so require less energy. Whereas Africa did not need the energy initially, but now they need more to keep things going.
Okay, so let me do that. So I stayed in an Airbnb, so I had to buy food from a local supermarket. When you are in Sweden, which is a cold country coming from a 9-month winter, 9 out of the 10 fruit that you buy in vegetables comes from where? Outside of Sweden. There are carrots from Morocco, and there are pineapples from here, and there are oranges from South Africa and around the world. When I go to Zimbabwe, what do I find in the grocery store? Not quite. In there, you find the same. So that was an interesting observation for me, that as much as we would think the energy levels are different, at certain levels, it might be. When I asked certain things in the one context, they said, no, it's not possible. And when I asked the similar things in the other context, they said, we will make a plan. Where do you think did the make a plan come from?
Africa.
From Harare. So certain things don't bring any material change, because we are all developed at a level of knowledge workers that we can cooperatively engage the world to get the right food in every corner of the world. But when you ask things that's maybe not to the core, but more to the edges, the one system that's very established would say, well, we've evolved into where we are, and it's working, and this is the norm. So we can give you this, and this is what it is. There's no exceptions to this. Whilst if you go to the other context, they would say, well, we don't have it, but let me see if we can't make a plan or get a substitute or get something alternative. Now that doesn't necessarily directly relate to the rabbit example, but it does feed into the idea of how do we evolve as a social system. And we are all gathered here because in some or other way, we're interested in the management of something. We're not here because we create gadgets or because we make products. We're here because we're interested in the management of something of some kind. And I'm curious to know, we've spoken a lot about the business leadership model of DaVinci developed over the past years. I was curious to know, are we really interested in evolving to a next level of engagement? Or are we still creating processes and practices as if we are operating in the 70s? Theo, you've been an executive in the finance sector. What is your sense about it? Are we thinking to evolve?
You know, we don't live in a static world. The world around us is evolving. So we have to make adjustments if you want to stay relevant in where you are engaged.
So that's a nice idea for us as academics.
Yeah.
Do you sense that's happening?
Definitely in the field that I am currently involved in, there is changes all the time, and they are adapting. They have to adapt in the banking sector. I mean, so it's
So in some sectors you see it happening.
yeah.
So let me ask this. Who of you obviously heard on the news lately that we are now from December, you and I are going to pay carbon tax. What does that do to you?
Carbon tax obviously means compliance. Obviously means the likes of ESCOM, your cement companies, whoever is producing greenhouse gases must comply. And obviously that raises their input costs. And then it will trickle down to us as consumers.
So will we deal with it as a compliance matter or as an evolving matter? Evolutionary matter?
We do it probably on both levels. I mean, we know about the protocols that have been held, with all the
International.
America and everybody else. So there is that requirement that the countries that subscribe to that they need to comply. But obviously, there's ongoing education in terms of the communities that agitate that. If you go to Greenland, you see that towards this time, winter time is just growing. So the communities are now much more aware and they are advocating for changes.
And you sense that as a community we will look at it as a developmental issue, challenge and opportunity, as opposed to compliance.
But Ben, I think most people will see it as just the financial impact that it will have on them. So I think that those of us that can sit and we can academicize it, and that's fine. But for general people, to see it as an evolution, you have to also take into account the different demographics of people. Because for some people, I think they will only see it as a financial impact to the bottom line and to the fact that they're already on the breadline. So I think it's dependent.
Okay.
So I don't think the concept of addressing it is not evolutionary. I think that we have to do those type of things, but I don't believe that everybody will see it in such a manner.
What happened in terms of the introduction of the NQF and SATWA and all of those kind of things, however long ago it was, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, it was a similar thing, and we had the same conversation. Was it about governance? Was it about evolution? And I think the intention was that it was evolution. Sadly, I think it became about governance, and I don't think that has shifted. And I think that it's ended up being a massive constraint. There were some people who saw it as evolutionary and benefited dramatically from it. But I think for the system as a whole, I don't think that it is enhanced education in South Africa, training development.
So, Prof. Krishna, my comment would be, are we really taking hands in becoming part of an evolutionary process? Are we going to work, do we show up every day with the idea of what can be altered to improve the levels of energy, of engagement? Or are we comfortable that it seems to work and therefore becomes a norm and becomes a rule and therefore I feel safe?
Yeah.
And how do we, sitting in this circle, relate to being safe as opposed to being not safe?
Yeah, I think that's, as Mala said, it depends on who you're talking to. Their understanding and interpretations might, range from mere compliance to the impact on the wallets. They're not going to see it as the evolution. You and I sitting around the table will see it. As I said, we approach it from an academic stance or perspective. But initially, I think with these kind of things like carbon tax, etc., we don't see the bigger picture of the world. You were mentioning all the conventions where these kind of agreements are made, and we as a country are merely complying. The country is complying, the citizens are complying, and of course, some will perceive this as just another way in which the government wants to generate revenue. You see, so it's much more complex than just reviewing it as, is it evolution or is it compliance? I think, depending on who you talk to, it may straddle compliance and evolution.
And that's okay. I just think we must be curious, what is the implications in the long run of being compliant? And what is the implications of being evolutionary? And how do we balance those two?
And what about the implications of non-compliance?
Yeah, which is another debate.
Yeah, there's penalties, the punitives.
Yeah.
Yeah, Prof.
But the notion of being evolutionary in mind is something that I'm concerned about sometimes, in whether we as management people in the workplace, whether we really embrace that construct, and whether we're comfortable being
Status quo.
ticking the box and
Yeah.
keeping the status quo.
Yeah.
And I just thought I just wanted to raise it and say I hope that all of us can search for that discomfort of being evolutionary, of not knowing.
I think it's important that you mentioned management. I think it, Joe Soap can be what you call it, complacent about these things. But at management levels, you can't be comfortable. You should be embracing these kind of things and saying, now how can I adapt and adjust to evolve with the system as it were?
Just a quick question.
Yes, thanks, Evan.
Is compliance also not a part of evolution? Or does compliance not also evolve? Do you look at them as standalones? Or because for some to evolve on their own is not a thought that they sit on, it's not possible. So the rabbits were looking to become this genetic element that they are now. However, because of the introduction of the virus, their bodies had to comply and evolve. So is compliance not a part of evolution?
I think that's a very important comment. I don't think it's an either or. But what I
in
what,
this
what,
context, in the context at the moment, it's sounding like we are separating the two.
but what I sense is that people focus the energy more to the compliance side and not to the evolving side. The difference for us with the rabbits is we can fast track and leapfrog our evolution, whereas the rabbits couldn't. They just did what they do, and their biosystem over time, on their behalf, overtook the biosystem of the virus. Now we could argue what happened with the virus, because if you look just for example at the AIDS pandemic, it's because it adjusts itself. But what it means in this case, the rabbit's biosystem overtook the virus biosystem, but not by choice. We want to think as humans, maybe they did make it by choice.
But I think as management, you have management and you have those that you manage. Some that you manage are like the rabbit traveling along at their own pace, and you need to move them along at a pace that they need to be, to evolve faster, at least to be more agile and also such things. So again, I look at compliance as a measure of pushing up the rate of evolution for the masses, while you're looking at evolution on your management level, at least in this context, your leaders need to be looking towards the evolution and finding ways in which to drag along those that wouldn't evolve at their own pace, I suppose. That's one way.
Well, that's what I would like to ask you, because I always want to comment and say I think that's part of our challenge. That's why we are held back and not as evolutionary as we could be with all the brilliance that sits up here, because we constantly pick up other people. We says, come Johnny, and I sometimes wonder if we must just not forget about Johnny.
I think in terms of evolution and what it is in humans, I mean, in the rabbit, the evolution was as a consequence of fortuitous random mutation. In the case of humans, what distinguishes us from animals is that animals have knowledge. I mean, my dog knows certain things, and he knows that when I wake up, I'm likely to give him some breakfast, so he knows that. But what he doesn't have, he doesn't know that he has knowledge. And this is Teilhard de Chardin writes extensively on this, the concept of humans knowing that they have knowledge. And it's knowing that we have knowledge that means that we can be more deliberate in our evolution. Right? That's.
But if we all know that we know, but many of us are not interested in it. And to my colleague's point, he says, well, maybe we must take Johnny along. And hence my comment and say, sometimes I just think, is it worth it to make Johnny believe that he can know? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I think some people do, some people don't.
But the consequences are dire if you don't then make Johnny believe that he can do better.
Okay, but let's think.
Because he then knows I'm gonna rob to make a living. But if you then help him, he can do better. He can become better.
Okay, let's pick another scenario. That's if we think of timelines. Maybe we think 50 years. I'm concerned about the dire consequence of this pick-up Johnny syndrome for the next 500 years. You know, it's always that survival of the fittest. When you look at the evolution of man, it was the survival of the fittest. And I wonder sometimes, because we can all be fit, because it sits here. But for some reason our systems are not activating this fitness, and we're carrying people. And I'm just concerned what is the dire unintended consequence for society 500 years down the line.
How I manage it myself, I know that I need to kick this person out, but my bar, I'm setting it at somebody else who's, I think, can see that he's much more above me. So even though I'm trying to drag this person, but I'm still, wanting to be hanging out with this group, wanting to be better, to do better as much as somebody that I see as a mentor and a coach and all. So, like he was saying, having that knowledge, you know that, okay, fine, I need to help this individual, but this does not mean where I am is where I'll be. If I want to do better, become better, I still need to set my bar 3 times higher.
And isn't education part of evolution then?
Well, it can, it cannot be. I think education has also partly dumbed us down. I've got the algorithm.
Yeah.
I know what's the solution. I'm not seeking, I'm not searching for you.
So I suppose that's how you would approach, if you look at the systems of education, that they've been created in such a way that doesn't allow for the innovation of thinking. So if we rethink the system of education and make it evolutionary, because I mean both colleagues that speak to the fact that what if you don't bring people along, because part of it has to be developmental, like part of evolution should be developmental, because I don't believe that we all evolve at the same pace. So would you say that those that evolve faster should just, that whole concept of survival of the fittest?
I think if whoever evolves faster will attract everybody to evolve faster. And I believe idealistically, eventually everybody will evolve faster. Because by not believing that, we're actually discriminating and said there will be weak ones amongst us. But God forbid that you tell me I'm the weak one. But for some reason we don't want to get into that energy field that says we will all be powerful.
So then don't you think it's the way we've been socialized? Then there's need, if you want to get that kind of mindset that, listen, you got to get off your butt and move. I'm not going to hold your hand. You got to socialize people to think like that.
Well,
but we in such systems, we've been socialized in such systems that we always want. For example, like this, we'll sit back and say, why doesn't the government do these things?
It's a culture thing.
Yeah.
But that's the debate that EMI are having subtly here in saying, what is the culture that we create? Is it a culture of pulling each other upwards, or is it a culture of actually holding each other at different levels? I know, and I just think there's so much more that can open up.
Yeah.
This world, we can go into different galaxies before the end of our time here, but we're not doing that. Because we said the edge of the world is this place called Earth. And then you get somebody who's going to break through it. And then we always say, wow. But everyone here could have broken through that.
So it's a case of the mindset as well.
Yes.
It's a case of mindset. So there's a need to make that shift.
Well, I think if we can all tap into what the universe is at large, we will have different conversations. But it seems to me we tend to tap in what is not out there, but what is in here and down here and not up there. And it's not the one or the other, but I think we can have more tapping into what is out there.
Yeah. So I guess all of us have a responsibility when we engage, whether it's on a social platform, on a work environment platform, etc., to start this conversation. To encourage people to become more curious and say, like, what can we do to evolve, rather than be governed by the system and wait for issues like to complying to system. And the only time you get some little energy, a little jerk, and then you go back to kind of square one, if I may call it. All right, I
Maybe
think.
just to conclude, to just somebody South African, there was a guy called Jan Smuts, and he developed the theory of holism. But what many of you may or may not know, he was a herds boy until the age of 12. Did not go to school until the age of 12. But by the age of 16, he obtained his matric. And he was a herds boy because there wasn't people to look after the family's animals. So he wasn't the oldest brother, so the oldest brother went to school. But he developed the theory of holism. He's still regarded by Cambridge as one of their brightest stars. I'm just talking about the notion of education. 12 years old, herds boy, developed a theory which now globally is appreciated. He only had schooling for 6 years at the school level. That's an interesting phenomenon.
So it came from within, not this.
Because I think he observed, he tapped into what the universe has.
Yeah, I think, Ben, that's a nice grandiose world we're looking for. The ideal world, eh? Thank you very much, Ben. I think you have stimulated our interest and you've made us more curious, and I think every time we leave here, we leave with something that makes us think for the next 3 weeks till we come back to Curiosity. All right, I think we can give Ben a hand.